Hi, everyone, and welcome to BioInformatics webinar, Revealing Insights, Trends, and Strategies in Life Sciences Digital Marketing and Advertising. I'm Keely Trull, Senior Marketing Manager for Science and Medicine Group. Before we get started, I just want to cover a few housekeeping items with everyone. So first, if you experience any issues throughout the broadcast, please feel free to put them in the chat portion of your attendee panel, and I'll work with you to help you fix those. Second, this presentation will be available on demand after the webinar is concluded. You'll receive an email with information on how you can access that. Third, we will be taking time to answer questions at the end of the presentation, but please feel free to go ahead and submit those questions to the Q&A at any time throughout Danny's presentation. We'll get to as many of those as possible. Leading today's discussion is Danny Wu. Danny is the Manager of Scientific Advisory Services at BioInformatics. Danny, thank you so much for joining us today. I'll pass it over to you.
Thanks for the introduction, Keely, and thank you everyone for attending our webinar today about our latest report title, 2024 Digital Marketing and Advertising in the Life Sciences. So I'm one of several authors for the study and will be reviewing select highlights from our latest title so that you can learn how to better engage with your customers. So just to provide an overview of the study, BioInformatics, part of Science and Medicine Group, designed a market research study to better understand the usage and perceptions of digital channels in the life sciences. Specific objectives for this study include better understanding the usage and preference of digital channels, characterizing the impact of social media and science-related media websites on scientists' perceptions, and finally, determine the most effective strategies for suppliers to market to and engage life science researchers. In order to achieve these objectives, we designed a survey that contained 45 questions that took a median time of 17 minutes to complete. It was fielded to 448 members of the Science Advisory Board, which is a segment of the scientific community who has demonstrated a willingness to participate in market research activities. In order to qualify for the study, respondents must have been located within North America, Europe, or Asia Pacific. They must work in either academia or pharma biotech organizations and companies. They had to conduct either basic research, drug discovery, drug product characterizations, release testing, process development, molecular diagnostics, preclinical research, or translational research. They must use at least one digital media channel in the last 12 months for professional purposes, and they have to indicate that they spend at least some time every week viewing work-related web content. A summary of the results from our report is presented in this webinar, and the full report contains additional findings, including a selection of results from past report titles that were used for trending analyses where applicable. And this report will be published shortly and will be available on our website as well as our Science and Medicine Group Knowledge Center. So just as reference, there were several terms that were used in the survey that were displayed to respondents to better facilitate understanding of the meaning of these key terms. In particular, respondents were asked about their usage of digital media for personal purposes and professional purposes. So personal purposes includes viewing web content related to their personal interests and hobbies, connecting with friends and family, etc. While professional purposes includes viewing web content related to their work, research, and or career development. For this study, respondents were asked to only consider the usage of online resources for professional purposes after the initial question. You'll also see throughout the report an icon on the corner of some slides that indicates that there is trended analysis available in the complete report, where we look at trends from 2022, 2020, and all the way going back to 2008. So we fielded the study to 448 respondents globally. 39% of respondents are from North America, 39% are from Europe, and we had 22% representation from Asia Pacific, including India, Japan, China, etc. Roughly 7 out of 10 respondents belong to academic organizations, while 29% of respondents belongs to pharma biotech industries, such as biopharma, biotech companies, contract organizations, and for-profit research institutes. We had a mix of respondents with different levels of purchase authority. The majority of respondents do participate in purchase decisions, with 62% of respondents indicating that they had budget authority, 37% indicating that they are able to evaluate products and make recommendations, and then 1% of respondents were end users only. We also had a mix of job titles represented in the study, including PIs, lab managers, professors, scientists, senior scientists, staff scientists, department heads, etc. We also had a mix in terms of generation and ages, as well as the type of research that they conducted and genders. So let's talk through the findings. In terms of strategies in digital marketing, there are 4 actions that we recommend: targeting, tailoring, engaging, and providing. In terms of targeting, life science companies should truly leverage the most commonly used digital channels for their target customers, whether they're academic researchers or pharma biotech researchers. And we'll talk through today about what some of those channels look like. They should also select the channels for their digital marketing efforts for maximum impact. Invest in upgrading their company websites to truly meet their customers' needs. Promote on science-related media websites such as BioCompare and ResearchGate, as well as regularly host live-streamed online events to continuously engage with their customers and provide valuable intelligence on their products, as well as solutions for experimental workflows. Other channels such as email, YouTube, and personal outreach may also be effective in really targeting the customers you're hoping to reach. The next step is tailoring the content. Personalizing digital content so that's relative to individual research applications is incredibly important. Research ranges across a diverse array of topic areas, and many scientists are only interested in the topics that are most relevant for their research applications, whether they're working in basic research on cancer biology or another molecule as well. Optimizing content for digital consumption is also really important. Choosing short form video options for social media, creating easy to digest infographics that readily highlights the positive properties of your product, and creating weekly newsletters via email, whether it's summarizing or creating a roundup of new products, is simple ways that you could tailor your content to make it relevant to your customers. Finally, what we also learned from this study is that less is often more. Many life science researchers indicate that they're currently overwhelmed with the amount of content that they receive in their inboxes and that they see every day online. So overwhelming scientists with this generalized content can be perceived as intrusive and can actually have the opposite impact, negatively impacting your marketing efforts. Thirdly, you must engage with your customers and try to understand who scientists will listen to and find to be credible. They're not that interested in hearing from sales and marketing managers. Scientists want to hear from the technical experts. It's important to also engage with life science researchers by creating interactive face-to-face opportunities to address scientists' questions directly. This real-time feedback allows for more tailored messaging, but also for your potential customers to truly understand what your product can do for them. Responding to scientist outreach is also important, whether it's on different social media platforms such as LinkedIn, X, etc. Scientists just want to be heard, that you're addressing their pain points and finding solutions. In addition, we mentioned talking about hosting online events and creating experiences. Encourage more attendance here. Engage them during the presentation, but also beforehand. encourage event attendance by offering gift cards, product demos, discounts, and more to boost attendance at your events. And finally, providing all of this content is incredibly important so that you're constantly accessible for life science researchers. So make the digital content accessible on all formats scientists are comfortable with. Make them readily searchable on your websites. Have them on demand. It doesn't need to be hidden behind an email, a form. Make it easily accessible. And these webinars on demand, application notes, technical protocols, and white papers are greatly appreciated and should be just available on your websites if possible. So let's talk about content in general. And it's important to create compelling content while leveraging these different touch points. So first, we want to make sure that this content is available on the key digital touch points that scientists actually use. From the study, we found that company websites are the primary channels for life science suppliers to engage with customers online. Requested improvements on websites include more accessible on-demand materials, more detailed product information, being able to compare the product against competitor products, and just overall better search functionality. Science-related websites, online events, and social media, especially LinkedIn, are additional channels to prioritize marketing efforts to reach the customers you want. We mentioned focusing on relevant topics. So suppliers should customize content to align with researcher interests. In particular, these interests, it might just be the new technologies, the latest trends, and that would encourage respondents to click on your ads. Showcasing new products, perspectives on scientific breakthroughs, and potential collaboration, partnership, and funding opportunities are additional topics of interest that might also engage life scientists. It is important to find your digital voice when showcasing this content. So suppliers should enable the most credible scientific voices to be heard, and mainly these are technical specialists and chief scientific officers. Perhaps creating a panel where they can understand how these tools are used. Scientists want to actually get into the weeds and understand the details. We also benchmarked supplier performance with different digital leadership categories and found that actually over 30% of respondents do not associate any suppliers with digital effectiveness, signifying that an opportunity exists for suppliers to differentiate themselves in the digital space. And digital effectiveness that we measured included best websites, webinars, social media presence, etc. So there's a lot of space for different brands to differentiate themselves and position themselves as a leader in marketing and being first to mind. Finally, creating experiences is another avenue to generate compelling content. Live virtual presentations and webinars are well attended and they are positively perceived by attendees. Suppliers should continue to host these online events that provide access to expert panels, interactive Q&A sessions, and networking opportunities. So let's talk through the data, or at least select highlights. So here, this was the only question we asked on both professional and personal bases. And we asked respondents to indicate which of the following online resources they have used in the past 12 months. And we see a dispersal of different types of resources used for professional purposes and for online purposes. And we found is that over 75% of respondents use life science supplier websites, science-related media websites, and online events such as conferences and webinars for professional purposes. So these are your core digital channels. On average, respondents indicated that they use 5.3 channels for professional purposes and used a fraction of some of the other channels such as live stream videos, digital science media outlets, and blogs and forums or online communities for professional purpose regions. I do want to focus on these three in the middle: social media, product reviews, recommendations, and e-commerce platforms. Particularly for social media and e-commerce platforms, they're used very frequently for personal purposes, but they are an opportunity to also engage directly for professional purposes as well, where nearly 1 in 2 respondents indicate that they use it for these work-related purposes. Sometimes it's just for career advice, but other times it's really to learn about new products and more. When looking at that social media usage, what we find is that LinkedIn remains the most popular social media platform for professional purposes. Over 90% of respondents use LinkedIn if they use social media for professional purposes. It's highest in North America and Europe, and slightly lower in Asia Pacific. Additional social media platforms are YouTube, X, Facebook, Instagram, and Slack for professional purposes. What we do learn is that regional differences do exist, unsurprisingly. Facebook and WeChat are more commonly used in Asia Pacific compared to other regions. Meanwhile, social media usage, such as X, Facebook, Instagram, all trail YouTube usage in North America, while X usage is on par with YouTube usage in Europe. On this slide, we don't show the data, but we do have trending analysis. But overall usage for social media platforms have increased since 2002, with highest growth in Europe for LinkedIn and Asia Pacific for Facebook and YouTube. I do want to mention that means these platforms specifically. Overall, we have seen a decline in social media usage for professional purposes. We also asked respondents how much time they spend online reading and viewing web content that's related to their work. And what we learned is that in 2024, on average, respondents spend 8 hours per week viewing work-related online content. Here, respondents spend 2.4 hours per week dedicated to learning about work-related products and services, while the remaining time is spent on other work-related activities. This is a considerable decline from past years. We had previously seen a steady increase in the amount of time spent online, but in 2024, since the last time we pulsed this question in particular, we've seen a 49% decline in average time spent online reading, viewing work-related web content. This question was phrased differently in past waves, though. So I do want to add that caveat to this analysis. So what are your customers looking for? Over 75% of respondents indicate that they go online to learn about research developments, product information, and scientific news. In addition, new technology trends and innovation, troubleshooting, experimental advice, demonstrations, manuals, white papers are also used by over 50% of customers. So life science researchers indicate that they're really just looking for materials that are relevant to their research, their work. And so really tailoring that content is important to them, especially since they seek such technical content. Specifically focusing on learning about a product and service that they're interested in purchasing, we found subtle differences by generation. So supplier websites is the top information source for across all generations, but there are a few differences. Online journals are less helpful to Zennials, who indicate that e-brochures and video tutorials are helpful, whereas we can see online journals is incredibly important for boomers, Gen X, and millennials, Gen Z. We mentioned e-brochures, other product literature, video tutorials, as well as customer reviews are all channels or of information sources that customers use to learn about new products, and creating awareness through these channels to market your product is very important. So for example, we mentioned earlier for websites, creating accessible on-demand materials and detailed product descriptions can really generate more awareness for your product. Ads on these websites for journals, life science portals, and techniques-focused publications are also more effective at drawing clicks and might be good channels to use to help respondents learn more about the products and solutions you're offering. So looking at attitudes towards online advertising and supplier content, there are differences in perceptions on how respondents feel about ads. Here we've categorized perceptions around how noticeable ads are, what they dislike about online ads, as well as the relevancy of the content that they're seeing. And what we found is that life science product ads tend to stand out more on websites and search engines than social media. So in the first three, we looked at ads on websites and search engines. Over 40% of respondents agree that they stand out more on social media. That dips to only 31% for, over 40% agree that ads stand out more on websites and search engines. That percentage of agreement drops to nearly 30% for ads on social media. And then respondents are divided. Many of them don't even notice online ads because they're so used to being overwhelmed by these ads. In terms of dislikes, many respondents agree that they see too many ads for life science products and services. And then many of them also indicate that they find them slightly annoying or creepy. In terms of effective targeting and relevancy, 40% of respondents indicate that they agree that online ads currently provide relevant suggestions for products for them, and that in terms of sponsored links, 37% agree that these sponsor links are relevant to them. So slightly more than respondents who disagree, but we do see a more divergent pool. And though respondents overall neutral whether they notice these ads, they all agree that they see too many ads. So in the future, these digital marketing efforts should really just take a tailored approach and avoid bombarding researchers with ads, really just providing content that are relevant to their needs. We mentioned credibility earlier, and we asked about the types of people within a company that have the most credibility when speaking about the performance of a company's products. And we do have this data trended as well. And we found that technical support representatives have the strongest credibility, overwhelmingly so, with 42% of respondents indicating that tech support can truly speak to the product itself. Other types of roles that have strong credibility include heads of research and development, product managers, chief scientific officers, and local sales representatives. Unfortunately, towards the bottom, respondents indicate lowest credibility for marketing, sales, and social media managers. We also evaluated how respondents perceive the usefulness and believability of certain types of content that's currently available in scientific publications and websites. Excuse me. And so here we looked at the percentage of respondents who indicate that they this content is highly useful or highly believable when it's written by life science suppliers or if it's written by publications and editorial staff. What we found is that white papers and case studies written by editorial staff are more useful and believable than supplier written content. So there is a caveat that respondents are slightly less trustful of the content that's provided by suppliers directly. Nevertheless, they do still find the material useful. So it is important to create this content for researchers. There are a few differences by region. Like I mentioned, reduced credibility exists for supplier-sponsored content, but that lack of believability is slightly shored up when it's in Asia Pacific. Meanwhile, European respondents indicated the most skepticism here. So let's talk about engaging life science researchers. We asked respondents to directly indicate how they would prefer suppliers and brands to engage with them, specifically over social media. and for them to elaborate. While 56% of respondents indicated they would not prefer not to engage with suppliers, 44% of respondents did indicate a willingness to engage and provide some fantastic ideas that we have themed and categorized to facilitate our analyses. And what we found is that these respondents would prefer companies to use digital channels selectively, such as using LinkedIn, using YouTube, the channels that they would prefer to use, highlight new innovations and trends on the products, as well as provide experimental tips and technical notes. Other comments from respondents indicate that they would prefer a reduced frequency of contact, tailored content that's relevant to them, educational content, webinars, and then direct interactions by responding to comments on these different social media channels. We've also selected a few verbatims from respondents who participated in the study. So for example, a European biopharma respondent said that they would like companies to engage with the general conversation and comments on LinkedIn, push their scientists, the people who are most credible to them, to discuss with us earlier in the process. An Asia Pacific respondent who from academia indicated that being responsive to comments, messages, and mentions on social media platforms is crucial. Prompt and thoughtful responses contribute to a positive brand image. And then from North America, there were two quotes that we selected here. I don't mind suppliers and brands to engage over social media, but the major problem is that they view it as free advertising and thus post way too often, sometimes multiple times an hour. When any account posts too often, I unfollow them because it's just too frustrating to have to scroll past their many posts. This indicates that less is more, really taking a fine comb and creating a content that's impactful, but is important, and not posting it every hour. And finally, one North American pharma respondent indicated post upcoming lunch and learns, seminars, fairs, new products, and also deals and discounts. That's what they're interested in. These educational sessions, hopefully ideally free, as well as information about products and deals and discounts could really entice them to engage with you more directly. In terms of virtual activities, many respondents indicated that they did participate in a supplier-sponsored online activity in the last 12 months. So by many, I mean over 75%. And they vary in the type of activity that they participated in. So in the pale blue, it indicates what they participated in. In the dark blue, it's the most positive activity where they could only select one. So interactive digital virtual presentations or webinars of a product, supplier-sponsored educational events, live stream demos, and direct meetings with suppliers in virtual settings were the most commonly attended online events last year. And then in terms of what is most positive, it's also these educational events and demonstrations. So these are truly the events that should continue and be leveraged more in the future. In terms of topics that are of highest interest to life science researchers, product demonstrations, training, and scientist-driven demonstrations are of strong interest in live stream content. And this live stream really enables participants to directly engage and ask questions that can be answered immediately. And what we found here is that overall, these topics of interest really veer towards the technical side. Technical content seems to be the priority for scientists, and there's very little interest in hearing from a senior exec discussing the future overarching R&D focus or learning about how new lab products are interested. Really, the focus is about the products, the technical solutions that are available to the researchers, and how that can impact their work directly. Oops. So I'm going to stop there. I will mention that the report does cover a wider array of topics. For example, we do talk about supplier perceptions, video, mobile offerings, et cetera, as well as trended analysis to understand how these perceptions have shifted over the course of the last few years.
Great, thank you, Danny. So at this time, we'll go ahead and jump into Q&A. If you haven't already, please go ahead and put any questions that you have for Danny in the chat. As I mentioned earlier, if for whatever reason we don't get to your question, we will follow up with you once we wrap the webinar up. Danny also mentioned earlier, so the content covered in this webinar is based on findings from BioInformatics' most recent report, which is 2024 Digital Marketing and Advertising in the Life Sciences. If you're interested in learning more about that, not to worry, we will follow up and email everyone with a link to that report once webinar concludes as well. So yeah, at this time, we'll go ahead and jump in. Any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat, okay? Can you provide some life science examples of what you mean by experimental content and experimental tips?
That's a good question. I think in this context, it's really around protocols as well as troubleshooting. When researchers are, using one of your products and they need to optimize it for their particular research. For example, they're looking at a protein of interest and they're using an antibody, and for some reason it's not working for them. They need to perhaps a little more hands-on feedback or tips from other life scientists or directly from your technical specialists on how best to optimize it or to resolve that.
Great, thank you, Danny. That was a really good question. Thank you for that, Mary. Anyone else? Any other questions? While we do wait for any additional questions to come in, I just wanted to let everyone know that you can find the slides from today's webinar in the handouts section of your control panel. So that should be available for you and easy to download. So if anyone's interested in grabbing those and taking them with you when you go, you're more than welcome to do that. Great. And I haven't seen any other questions come in, Danny, so I will just let everyone know if you have any follow-up questions, you can email us at info@bioinfoinc.com. I'm going to keep the webinar line open for a few minutes, so anyone who wants to download the slides from the handout section, you'll have time to do that. Thank you all so much for joining us, and I guess, Danny, I'll hand it to you. Any last words from you before we wrap up for the day?
Just thank you to everyone who attended, and please feel free to reach out if you have any questions about the content from today's webinar.
Great. Thank you all so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.